It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show, only on Secular Media Network.
Buongiorno tutti. This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. This is number 176. We're in July of 2016, and I just got back from the ARK Park. Well, I actually wasn't in the ARK Park. I was at the ARK Park protest, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. A couple things that I do want to cover now. One of my listeners, because I have the smartest listeners in the world, sent me some information about master limited partnerships. And we discussed this in great detail, and I may have to do it again. Back in May of 15, it was show number 121, master limited partnerships. The short story, in case you've not listened to that episode, is that master limited partnerships is a type of incorporation within the United States that applies specifically to companies that garner more than 90% of their revenue from the transportation via pipeline of oil or natural gas. And yes, if that sounds like a very specific type of business, you're absolutely right. And I've had clients come to me that have had 15, 20, 30% of their money in master limited partnerships. That means you have 20, 25, 30% of your money invested in a very, very specific type of business. And there's really only maybe 20 or 25 companies that have pipelines across the United States of any material size. So you're probably violating my 5% in any one stock rule, and you're definitely violating, I don't know that I have a rule, but I don't really like the idea of all of your money being concentrated in one incredibly small sector of stock. So that's the first bit of problems. The next thing is that master limited partnerships, by law, have a carve-out where they do not need to follow standard and customary accounting procedures. If that doesn't send off alarm bells to you, you have no idea what standard and customary accounting procedures are. It is the one thing that makes the American stock market better than every stock market in the world, is because we can see data, we can see information, and we can have a chance of valuing companies correctly. It's still a big game. It's still an art. People still steal and cheat and lie and forge documents and forge numbers. All those things will always happen. But the vast majority of companies accurately report their value, and you can look at that. Master limited partnerships are exempted from that requirement. So you are basically buying something that, as far as I'm concerned, has the clarity of buying something in China. I'm not interested in it because the numbers are fiction, or at least can be fiction. So that being in mind, that in and of itself would scare the ever-living crap out of me. Now, reason that people buy master limited partnerships, and one of the reasons that brokers and advisors will sell them to you, because you probably had no fucking clue what they were before someone told you it was a great idea for you, is that they're stocks that pay really high dividends. We're talking 7, 8, 9, 10% dividend. You can't get that in a normal stock. You can't get that in a normal bond unless you're taking huge risk. One of the things you should always know, and we've talked about this before, if current U.S. government short-term bonds are paying 2% dividend, how is someone able to pay you 8% dividend? That should be a concern. If you didn't know all of the stuff we talked about, that should be a problem. Now, it has been argued by people who are selling these things that it's because they make massive amounts of money, and because they also have another special magical rule that is unique to them, is they don't have to pay taxes. All of the money goes to you, and you get to pay taxes. Well, this also creates a problem, is that this is an incredibly complicated investment. Master limited partnerships. I don't like limited partnerships in any regard, but master limited partnerships, the tax filing can be enormous, and you may not be able to do it on your own, period. And your CPA may charge you hundreds of dollars of extra time and money to do the filing. The next thing is that currently the vast majority of the dividends that they are able to pay for you is because they have what is called a continuous offering of shares. They're always selling more stock. So if you own the stock, every time they sell more shares and more shares and more shares, your position is devaluing. So you own a smaller and smaller percentage of the company. So you have no idea to figure out what its value actually is, because you can't see actual numbers because they don't have to file them. And two, whatever value it does have, you own a smaller and smaller percentage. So in theory, the price of your stock should continually go down as they pay out dividends, because the actual value of the company hasn't changed, but now there's more shares. And it turns out that the vast majority of the dividends that they pay you they're only able to do that because they're selling more shares. So as they sell more shares and they bring this money in, they turn around and they hand it back to you. If this is starting to sound like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme to you, you're right. You should not own one of these, period. If you have anything that says MLP on your investment statement that you just got from June 30th or any other investment statement, or your advisor suggests that you buy an MLP, it is likely that they have no fucking clue what they're talking about. They don't know what they're selling you. They don't understand the risk. And if they've told you that it's a low-risk investment, if they've told you that it's uncorrelated to the oil industry, or that it's not going to go down and it's going to go up like a stock, plus it's got dividends, they're living in a fucking fantasy land. So you should seriously consider not using that person to provide you advice. Often in the financial services industry, advisors are paid to sell things. They are not paid to know things. They don't themselves understand how these things work, and they will simply repeat to you the talking points that they've been provided by the companies that sell these. What brings this all back, and why we're talking about it again, is someone said, Phil, did you know that there's an index that tracks this market? And I said, why no, I didn't. It's kind of like the Dow Jones itself tracks 30 stocks, and the S&P 500 index tracks 500 companies, and you can even have the total stock market index. So I found this, or actually a client, one of the listeners sent me this, and it's called AMZ is the symbol. And you can go look it up. You can go find it on Google Finance. You can find it on Yahoo Finance. And you can go to the company's website. It's called Alerian, ALERIAN. And again, their market symbol is AMZ. And so that's the symbol for the index. And another one of the things that I've come up recently, a few clients have sent me information. When you check the variation of the price point over time, you have to make sure that you understand, are you looking at simply the price point, or are you reconsidering dividends? And the difference is wildly important. So while there is the symbol AMZ, it does not include the dividends, which would not necessarily be fair. So I'm going to go to the Alerian website, and again, it's ALERIAN if you want to look it up. And when I talked about this back in May of 2015, their index price was around $1,600. I'm not sure exactly how that's cobbled together. I haven't dug into it that much, but let's just go with that for this moment. By February of 16, it was around $800. So one more time. It went from $1,600 to $800. It fell by half. And this includes the dividends that were paid during almost a year time period. So including dividends, you lost half of your money. This is exactly what I had warned against, is because there was no way to properly value these things. If the dividends stop coming in because they can't sell enough shares to continuously pay the dividends, like a pyramid scheme, these investments are subject to incredible price drops, losing 50% of its value in 10 months. Unbelievable. You thought you were in a conservative investment. You thought you were in an investment that was like a bond. Well, it's not like a fucking bond. Okay? It's a stock that pays out a ridiculously high dividend with no justification. There's no source of income that pays 8% dividend for them. They're selling more shares. And when they stop selling more shares, they can't pay the dividend. When they can't pay the dividend, no one wants to own it, and everyone runs for the exit. The question is, are you first out or are you last out? If you're last out, you get whatever price someone is willing to pay for the shares, which might be 5 or 10 cents on the dollar. Now, the interesting thing is since February, they've gone up from $800, $900 to $12, maybe $12, $1,240. So if you still have one of these things, get the hell out. It is a Ponzi scheme. It is a pyramid scheme. You might make money at 8, 10% a year for a few years, but it might all stop. It's a very, very risky investment. And if you're okay with a very risky investment and you're fully aware that it's risky, cool. Enjoy. I will not put my money in this. I will never put clients' money in this. And anyone that has done so, you shouldn't have as your advisor. So that's a little update on Master Limited Partnerships, MLPs. You can Google that and find out more information on your own, of course. It's all on the internet. I also had someone recently contact me and that they read something on the internet that says baby boomers are going to be retiring soon and it's going to destroy the value of the market. Phil, what do you think about this? And this is something I've heard before, but I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show, so it seemed like a great idea. The philosophy is that if all the baby boomers retire and take all their money out of the market and put it in something conservative, you have this problem with supply and demand. You have the same number of stocks in the United States, but the demand shrivels up. And when the demand decreases, prices fall, assuming you have the same number of shares to buy. So this could create a scenario that could be very, very bad, at least in theory. The unfortunate thing is that the websites often don't take into account reality. Now, so the first thing to remember is that the vast majority of U.S. citizens do not have any investments in the stock market. It's sad, but it's true. Last time I looked, and I didn't search this for the show, but the average person's portfolio at retirement is about $50,000. That is average for all people. The vast majority of people have zero. A smaller portion have a reasonable amount, and then there's a smaller portion that have the vast majority of the money. I'm sure you've heard of the 80-20 rule, where 20% of anything has 80% of some other thing. Well, in investing, it's often more like the 90-10 rule. 10% of the people have 90% of the money. And the same thing applies to the stock market. So the vast majority of people, since they don't have any money in the U.S. stock market, they have no money to take out. So another thing is that a lot of people that invest a lot in the stock market have a portion in international. And people around the world, all around the world, invest in the United States. And many countries around the world do not have the baby boom age generation that we have, and some countries have 25, 30% of their population under the age of 25. These are people who, if they have money, which they may not, at some point might buy stocks, and they might buy in the U.S. stock market. Another concern with this whole theory is that the United States population in total is growing. So even if only a small percentage of people, as long as the percentage of people does not decrease that can invest, more people will be investing in the U.S. stock market, even as more people do retire. Another one is that when people retire, they don't generally sell all their stocks. And again, keep it in mind, most people have no money in stocks. And then there are people that have lots and lots and lots of money in stocks. They don't just, poof, one day sell all their stocks. They have a reasonably balanced portfolio. They might have half in bonds or half in stocks. It's a common model that's thrown out there. I don't like that philosophy. I believe more in my cushion idea, and that you should control the size of your cushion based on your cash flow needs. Another thing is that people don't just suddenly go to a conservative portfolio the day they retire. They often do it 5, 10, 15 years in advance. So with that in mind, baby boomers, which are born between 1946 and 1964, have a current age range between 52 and 70. Many of them have already retired. And matter of fact, the vast majority of them, counting all the way down to 52, the vast majority of them are in a phase where they've already started to, or they're well along the way, of moving to a conservative portfolio. So if that was going to have a devastating effect on the U.S. stock market, it would have already happened, and it hasn't. So another thought is that almost 15% of baby boomers have passed away. And when baby boomers pass away, just like any generation, they leave the money to their descendants. And when you get a